Republicans have to get tougher and fight. We have some that are great fighters, but they have to get tougher and fight because the Democrats are trying to hurt the Republican Party for the election.
Donald Trump there calling on his own party to fight tougher against the impeachment process. It comes after Trump was forced to retreat on issues like Syria and the G7 following GOP pushback. And after one House Republican became the first to say that he's open to impeaching Trump, Fox News host Chris Wallace revealing rumblings on Capitol Hill against the president.
I talked to a very well-connected Republican in Washington this week, somebody whose name you would know well, who says that if the House votes to impeach and it gets to a trial in the Senate, there is now a 20% chance, he believes, obviously it's just an estimate, now a 20% chance enough Republicans will vote with the Democrats to remove the president.
All right, betting markets have in fact increased the odds since the Ukraine scandal exploded recently. In fact, skeptics might say reality is closer to this scene from Dumb and Dumber. Watch.
What do you think the chances are of a guy like you and a girl like me ending up together?
I'd say more like 1 out of a million.
So you're telling me there's a chance? Yeah!
So there is a chance, guys. Joining me now, Matt Welch, editor-at-large for Reason Magazine, and Elise Jordan, former aide in the Bush White House, now an MSNBC political analyst. Great to have both of you here on set. Matt, let me begin with you. There is a chance because the president is calling on Republicans to get tougher. So if you're reading that messaging coming out of the White House, it means he's not happy with the response so far.
I mean, he retreated from the G7 thing in a hurry. He didn't do that because he was getting beat up on MSNBC. He did that because he needs people to hold the line. And this plus the Syrian action are both cases where there was a loud amount of grumbling on Capitol Hill. Problem for him is that we forget now, but in 2016, when he's running the general election against Hillary Clinton, more than 10 GOP senators never endorsed him. They don't like him, right? You know, we tend to think because, he has such strong support among Republicans and among lawmakers, where people sit on their hands, or they even defend him, that it's out of affection. It's not. It's out of fear. It's out of fear that their districts like him more than
it's a political calculation, not about liking Trump.
So when you have this Ukraine deal being a lot more, it's polling a lot worse for Donald Trump than the Mueller report stuff ever did, that begins to change that calculation. So we start to see that support start to dwindle.
You'd think the president, if he had any kind of political savvy, would be like, this is not the week I should do something in Syria. It's certainly not the week I should try to do something that is controversial, like announce the G7 summit. He lost support within his own party because of these two. That has got to be a political misstep.
Donald Trump can't control his impulsivity. And what we have seen in all of these recent actions, he just goes with what he wants in the moment, whether it is telling an outright lie, like saying that he's born in Germany, like he did that once, or, it's deciding to capitulate to the Turkish dictator. It's there's not much of a chess game going on. And I think that that's part of the bigger picture, that so often that, this grand design is ascribed to what he's doing in a given moment, and it's just not there. And you see just how self-destructive he is at the end of the day.
Let me play for you guys the spectrum of responses. You got Mitt Romney on one end, you got Senator Lindsey Graham on the other. Watch their takes.
Are you open-minded if more comes out that you could support impeachment?
Sure. I mean, show me something that is a crime. If you could show me that, Trump actually was engaging in a quid pro quo outside the phone call, that would be very disturbing.
And saying, China, will you investigate my political opponent is wrong. We certainly can't have presidents asking foreign countries to provide something of political value that is, after all, against the law.
What do you make of Lindsey Graham's response there? I mean, he's taking a narrow definition. He's qualifying it by saying, outside the phone call, almost tacitly saying like, it happened in the phone call, but outside the phone call, did something else happen? And secondly, saying you have to show me a crime. That's not what the Constitution says. There is the bar of high crimes and misdemeanors.
Sure. And there's also the treasure trove of tapes from Lindsey Graham in 1998 saying different things about impeachment. But I think it's actually significant that he seems to be wobbling a little bit in this case. It shows that there's a possible weakness of support. But I want to just rush in here. Yeah. I've seen now for 2.5 years those people in the media and a lot of Democrats have this sort of wish fulfillment syndrome when it comes to everyone wants to get to the end state of this, and they're rushing forward towards it. There's been a lot of kind of magical thinking on there. If you've been betting on Republicans to stand up to Trump, you have lost so many bets up until now. So yes, it could happen, but there has to be, I think, a really sober set of
is it 1 in a million, like in
investigations.
But I think you're making an important point.
Yeah.
You look at, though, how all of the preconditions are really coming into place. This was a bad summer for Donald Trump. I called it his racist recession summer. He's tweeting, and then the Dow drops by 2.5%. Then you go into September, and then it's the Ukrainian debacle. Then now it's the Syria debacle. Donald Trump has had such a litany of missteps over the past just 2 months, and particularly with Republicans who are concerned about foreign policy. You finally have Mitch McConnell writing an op-ed. Granted, he talks more about Obama than Trump, but clearly Republicans are unnerved by the recent direction.
And I think it shows the limitations of the get over it defense. At some point, that makes it untenable for Republicans to wake up and look at themselves in the mirror.
Let me get your thoughts on this. You've got a little bit of groundswell growing in terms of the polls, GOP support saying that impeachment is growing at least a little bit, the inquiry phase, not necessarily the trial phase. A New York Times column says Americans should take to the streets on impeachment. I'm curious to get your thoughts. Do you think that street protests, street demonstrations camped out in front of the White House could add any, not necessarily in the White House, but even back in some of these Republican districts for senators that may be up in 2020?
God, no.
That wouldn't make a difference.
No. Street protests. Were you here in 2004? Do you remember the Republican National Convention? There were 200,000 people in the streets, anti-war demonstration. Did that move the needle? I mean, I was happy to see people protesting the war. There should be more people doing that on that kind of principle. But street protests very, very rarely have anything to do with anything except for the way that it makes the protesters themselves feel. I don't think that that's going to take a swing state Republican and say, you know what, I'm going to do it this time.
Nobody likes to respond to some mob pressure, I guess, certainly not here. What do you think?
What congressmen and senators do respond to, keep calling their phone line over and over and
Showing
over.
up at those town halls.
Show up at those town halls. Pressure them to do town halls. Pressure them to get out there. It is just incredible to me how many Republican congressmen and women in the Trump era do not actually show up for town halls. And it's the contrast, with someone like Justin Amash, who actually does go out and explain his thinking. It's just very stark.
I think some of those town halls may have been the reason why they were able to save, to some extent, Obamacare early in the Republican-controlled House when they put that pressure on them from voting against it. Matt Welch, Elise Jordan, thank you guys so much. Appreciate it.
Hey, I'm Ari Melber from MSNBC. You can see more of our videos right here, or better yet, subscribe to our YouTube channel below. You could have been anywhere in the world, but you're here with us, and we appreciate that.